Welcome to the LeggLife podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherry.
Sherry Beth, this is a special one.
Yes, it is.
What episode is this?
100.
We made it to episode 100.
Yes, we did.
And so what we're going to do on this episode is look back and look forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the things that we have loved about doing our podcast.
Yep.
Is it the kind of thing we want to continue? What have been some of our favorite things?
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about just some analytics on how the podcast has done.
Yeah.
And just kind of all about the LeggLife podcast.
Looking back, looking forward, like you said.
Because here's the thing. We've made it 100 episodes. Mm-hmm. This is interesting. Did you know that the majority, and it's not even a small majority, the vast majority of podcasts don't make it 10 episodes?
Oh, well, I mean, we didn't on our first attempt.
Well, on the last podcast? That's true. Our last podcast failed. But this one has been... This is super simple.
This is so easy, and this is one of the things that we actually just really enjoy doing.
And I think one of the reasons we enjoy doing it is this feels natural to us.
Yes, I think that we've said this probably many times, but a lot of the podcast ideas have just come because we actually just have this conversation, and we're like, we should have this on the podcast, and so we just kind of hit record.
Well, that's how the whole LeggLife podcast started.
Right.
Was kind of sitting in the living room with us and with friends, having conversations, being like, dang it, why didn't we record that?
Right.
And so we just decided, well, let's do that.
Let's do it.
So let's talk a little bit about the podcast.
Yeah.
We are coming up on our 3-year anniversary.
Yep.
It started in January of 2021. Mm-hmm. We had talked about a podcast for a while. Obviously, we had done like the Spill the Teacups podcast for 2 or 3 episodes.
Not very long.
And then stopped doing that because we realized we didn't care enough. And then started doing this. And for the most part, we've actually done pretty well. So we have recorded, our goal is weekly. We've done that on about 2/3 of the time.
Right.
Not bad.
Not bad. When real life actually kind of gets in the way.
Is when we don't.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We've had over 80,000 people listen to our podcast.
That's amazing.
Which is genuinely crazy.
Yeah.
The place that most people listen to us is Apple, for sure, by far. And then Spotify. And then I think YouTube. And then just kind of a smattering of other places. Mm-hmm. But Apple for sure is the biggest, then Spotify, and then YouTube. Now, we've decided, Sherry, to only do an audio version of this podcast.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that we know that do record, film their podcasting.
Film. How old are you?
Film, video. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah, we've decided that is not something we want the LeggLife podcast to do, simply because for us, we want it to feel like a conversation in our living room, in our pajamas.
And honestly, obviously you can't see this, but a lot of our, when we're talking, we're actually looking at each other. We're not looking forward where a camera would be. And I don't want to feel like I need to look at the camera, and it's not natural to me to have a conversation with Adam not looking at him.
There's a lot of times that what we do is we actually will turn in our chairs and record the podcast just looking at each other.
Right.
Because it really does. We want it to be a conversation. And also I don't know, this is going to sound strange, but something changes for us when a camera's involved. And that's the thing that I love about the podcast is that I feel like you get a more honest look at who we are through the podcast than the vlog.
Yeah, and I also don't want to have to do my hair and makeup and put on real clothing.
I don't want to wear clothing if I don't have to.
There have been times that you have not been.
That's the next LeggLife After Dark podcast, the naked episodes. I'm just kidding. So let's talk a little bit about because I thought this was interesting, the episodes that have been listened to the most.
Yeah,
it was different than I expected.
Our
number 1 most listened to across all platforms was the episode we did on healthy life rhythms.
Yeah, which I love.
It's one of my favorite episodes.
Yep.
And I think it speaks to the world we live in, where people are wanting to have a better balance on work, on life, on social, on all the kind of stuff.
Right.
And so that was our most listened to.
I love that.
Then Making Friends as Adults.
Yeah.
Which is funny because, again, it's so awkward.
It really is. I went to dinner recently with a friend of mine, and she and I were talking about this, and it's just like, it's so awkward as an adult to be like, can you be my friend? And it's just, it's harder. It's weirder to like try to make friends as adults.
Totally. And then number 3 was a New Year's resolutions podcast. I think that was the first year. That might have been one of our first, if not the first podcast episode that we did. Then things we don't like about living in Alaska was a popular one. Then our Enneagram one.
Yeah.
And then our Fiji anniversary debacle. But here's what's interesting about that. The Fiji anniversary debacle is our 6th most listened to podcast overall, but it is the most listened to one on YouTube.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't that interesting? It's number 1 on YouTube, has over 1,000, I think, views. But overall, it is number 6.
Nice.
I thought that was interesting that the Fiji one would be so high over there.
And I wonder if that's because people wanted to go comment on it.
Possibly. And people watched the Fiji trip on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that's where they wanted to interact there. Some highlights for us over the first 100 episodes.
Like our favorites, our personal favorites.
Not necessarily episodes, but just like what have highlights been from like just doing the podcast?
So one of my favorite things that we did was the relationship series.
I loved that.
I don't remember when we did that, but it was kind of over the course of a month, I think, that we just did like 4 or 5 of them. That was really fun for me, and I would actually like to do more of those.
Well, this was one of the things as we were talking about this, because we both feel the same way. We loved the series concept over the course of a month. And so we've sort of taken that idea and said, let's not like push that off too far.
Right.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to.
We are.
We decided we're going to do an Advent series this year.
Yeah.
Here in just a couple of weeks. We're going to, Advent is kind of 4 weeks long, and the main themes are hope, joy, love, and peace. And so we thought, what beautiful things to talk about kind of during the Christmas season on the podcast.
Yeah. So we're going to do that.
So last year we took the month of December off on the podcast. We're not doing that this year.
We're not doing that this year. And we're going to make a video about it and kind of explain what our upload schedule is going to be. But we're going to stick with the Saturday podcasts through the month of December.
And one of the things that I'm excited about is it kind of invites you into a little bit more of kind of our faith, our belief, in a way that even if you don't share it, you get a glimpse into the kind of things that make us who we are.
Yeah.
And so, plus, here's the reality. No matter what your belief, no matter what your faith, hope, joy, love, and peace should be things all of us can agree on.
Yeah, right. Regardless of what your faith or non-faith is, I feel like those 4 concepts should be fairly worldwide.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for kind of a bit of an Advent series this year. Sherry, one of the things that you've mentioned as we've talked about the podcast is what it meant to you when you were sick.
Yeah, so we actually started it in January of 2021, really before we knew how sick I was going to get. I was kind of in the midst of getting sick, I think. The month of December had been pretty rough, but it seemed like the beginning of January of 2021, we kind of had a handle on it. And I think... just a matter of days after we uploaded our first one is when it really took off and got really, really, really bad.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that all of the things were there for us to just stop doing the podcast because life got so crazy during that season and hard. I'm surprised that we kept going, but I think one of the reasons we kept going is what it meant for you.
Right. For me, it was a way that I could still contribute to our channel, to our following, I guess, because I could not be on video, because I was so sick, and I looked terrible, and so I didn't want to be on video. And honestly, the podcast is just sitting still and talking, which is what we were kind of doing anyway, and so I didn't have to look decent for a video. I didn't have to make myself up at all. Like, I could just continue to talk.
And I think that it gave you a little bit, just kind of like me as an observer of all that, you weren't working.
Right.
You couldn't really move. You couldn't leave the house.
Right.
And so in some ways, it gave you something to do. Like, there was like a little bit of purpose in that. And I think that was something that you needed because it gave you something to do without necessarily physically having to do something.
Right. And I think that I really only missed a couple of them in the midst of my sickness. It is interesting going back and listening to some of them, especially kind of like near the end of February when it was really, really, really bad. Before we had a diagnosis, before we really knew if I was gonna live.
Yep.
You can hear it in my voice, which is scary. I think you can kind of hear my body shutting down.
Yeah, we went back and kind of listened to some of those episodes during the worst of it. And I remember when we listened to it, because we just kind of looked at each other like, oh gosh.
Right.
Like that, it just felt, you could hear it in your voice.
Right. I was losing the energy to fight.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
There was one episode that, because you, like I said, you missed a couple. There was one episode I remember that we were going to record, and I don't remember what the topic was going to be.
I don't remember what the topic was going to be, but I remember thinking I basically lived in a lazy boy recliner in our living room, and needed help from Adam to get up and into the chair. And we were going to record something, and I don't remember what it was, but I fell asleep. Yeah. And sleep for me at that time was so rare. I was sleeping in 10 to 15 minute increments, and I fell asleep, and you were like, I am not about to wake you up
Absolutely
to do a podcast.
Not.
And so you came downstairs to our studio, and you were just like, I'm not going to wake her up. I'm just going to do my own thing.
And I don't remember what episode that was. I'd like to go back and listen and be like, wait, what episode did I record by myself?
I actually think that it ended up being like how to take care of somebody or something along those lines. Like,
was it how to care for the caregiver kind of?
I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look. But you ended up just going off topic of what we were going to talk about because I was not able to join you because I was actually sleeping,
which is like the biggest thing that you needed.
Right.
So that was, I do remember just from the very beginning, like the podcast was so important to you because it gave you something to do when
I couldn't really do anything else.
You couldn't really do anything else.
Yep.
One of the things that I love, kind of one of my favorite things about the podcast is, and this goes back to why we want it to be just audio, it just feels so natural. Here's what I would say. We really do try to make YouTube an actual snapshot of our life, but it is an edited version. It is, we show you what we want. You know what I mean? Like there are things that
it's an edited highlight reel.
As everything on YouTube is.
Right.
I think that if you listen to the podcast, if you watched the vlog, and then if you got to know us and spend time with us in our home, I think you'd say both of them are Adam and Sherry, but the podcast is what it's like to be with them in their living room. I think so, yeah. And I love that. Like, my favorite thing about the podcast is how it just feels like us. And, I mean, honestly, I think we can probably count on one hand how many times we've actually had to edit the podcast. Like, we really just hit record and then stop, and then we upload it. I bet I haven't edited a podcast in well over a year. Right, because it's literally just we hit record, we chat, and then we stop. Yeah. And then we upload it. Well, and that's why, like, I have friends who do, like, really professional podcasts, and they're like, oh, man, I spent so many hours editing. And I kind of feel bad because I'm like, it took me 4 minutes. You know what I mean? And 3.5 of those were just doing the description and the tags. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's so simple because it really is just a conversation. But I love that. Like, to be honest with you, I don't ever want our podcast to be anything more than this. I don't either. And I mean, it's so lightweight that in the midst of everything else that we have going on in our life, it's so easy and enjoyable. I agree. One of the things I was reading earlier was people were writing about like the success or failure of podcast. And it's interesting because this isn't something that I've thought about, but I don't know how I don't know to me what success looks like other than the fact that we just keep doing it. Because for us, like, we haven't gone out and looked for sponsors for the podcast. We don't monetize the podcast. There's no benefit in some ways to us on this podcast. And I love that. I love that it just gets to be like
It just gets to be.
It just gets to be. Now, may we get a sponsor someday? Sure, if the right thing came along and it fit great. But it's not the kind of thing that we're out there, like, researching and hunting down.
Right.
And I think success for me is the fact that we just keep doing it.
I agree.
It's not... I don't know. It just feels... It feels like us, and as long as it feels like us, and as long as we keep going, success.
Yep.
We made 100 episodes.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Did you think when we started this, we would make it 3 years and 100 episodes?
I don't ever think that far ahead, and I don't think in, like, numbers and stuff, so I don't know. I don't know what I thought we would get out of it, but...
Yeah, I definitely didn't. I will say that. I definitely did not. And I think the reason I didn't expect us to make it this long is that, the fact that we've been doing YouTube for 8 years, we've made over 1,100 videos. Mm-hmm. That's insane. Like, mm-hmm. that's a crazy number. And that takes a lot of work, right? We spend hours on YouTube every week.
Right.
Despite what our videos look like. And I kind of just thought that this would be something we did for a season, and then the busyness of life, the fact that YouTube is where the majority of our community is kind of our big platform, it's where we make money, I thought that would press this out. And I love that it hasn't. So I didn't think we'd make it to 100, but gosh darn it, here we are.
I love it.
So let's talk about going forward.
Looking ahead,
because we have a few goals mm-hmm. on kind of what we want for the podcast going forward.
Yeah, we already talked about we want to do more series, mm-hmm. And we're going to kick that off with the Advent series, but we would like to do more themes and kind of dig in more to those kinds of things and just do a series on the topic.
I think one of the problems we're running into, and this is one of the places we could use your help, what are some things that you'd love to hear us talk about kind of in multiple weeks?
Yeah. Or something that has different facets that we can kind of press into a single thing each week. That's
why the relationship series lent itself so well to that, because there's so mm-hmm. many different, there's boundaries, there's all of these things you can talk about. And so we want to hear from you. Let us know if there are series you'd love to hear from us. That'd be great. The other thing we really want to do, and this is one thing I've wanted to do for so long, mm-hmm. more guests.
We want to have guests on our podcast. We have had a few. Uh-huh. Obviously, we've had Auburn, we've had Justin, yep. We had our nephews. Yep. But we would love to have more people on our podcast.
We have so many friends that have the most unique and fun stories. Mm-hmm. And I just really want next year to start to include more of that.
Yep.
I love the fact that our podcast isn't, in the terms of listeners, it is by far been around longer and does much better than the average podcast. And so I'm like, maybe we should start like using this to help other people and to hear their stories.
Right.
So I really want to do that.
Yep.
The next thing, and this is more me than you, I would love to figure out, so just so you guys know how we record this, we have my laptop with GarageBand mm-hmm. running in front of us. And we have one blue snowball microphone that we position between us, mm-hmm. but we position it closer to Sherry.
Because I have a quieter voice, generally.
And so we try to balance the audio, like, get it as much as we can. But here's the thing. I have no clue how to do audio. I have no clue how to, like, get good microphones so that we sound better.
Right.
But I know that sometimes bad audio can be distracting. And I would love to just figure out how to improve the audio quality on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's something I'd like to do.
Look into what equipment we would need.
Look into what equipment we need. Here's the thing. There's a balance between focusing on equipment and it becoming too polished, where it loses kind of the fun of what this is.
Right.
And then, I don't know. I in some ways, I like being able to just have like a little crappy microphone that we just record on.
Right. We do actually have 2 snowball microphones, and when we first started, we each had our own, but then one like crapped out, and we were like, well, I guess we're going to share.
I can't figure out how to, and this is so dumb because I'm sure there's a way to, I can't figure out how to record with 2 microphones through GarageBand. And so it's literally, because you guys, we are so not tech savvy. And so I need it to be plug and play.
Right. We did have it figured out at one point, but the other one just stopped working and we couldn't figure out how to make it start working.
Yeah.
And
so weird.
Yeah. So now we just share.
One other thing I'd like to do, and I just love these episodes so much. I really love our train of thought episodes.
Yeah.
We do it a lot on road trips where there's not a topic, but we kind of just start somewhere and then we just talk.
And again, like that, I feel like those are probably the most like authentic because there's no points that we want to try to make. Like it's really just like a stream of consciousness for us. And it, I think, shows a glimpse into how our conversations actually go.
Yeah, that is what it is like to be in the car with us.
Right. Like, we literally just like hit record on our phones or whatever and just talk. And that's how all of our, aside from hitting record, that's how all of our conversations tend to go.
That's what's so funny. So when you guys hear our like travel podcasts or like our car podcasts, we are literally recording that. We are literally.
Sorry.
First of all, very rude. Also, the LeggLife podcast now interviewing for new co-hosts. We are literally recording on the voice memo of our iPhone,
right,
while holding our iPhone between us.
Yep.
You guys,
super
80,000 of you have listened to that crap.
So thanks.
We think you're dope. I would like to figure out, and I don't know, maybe there's something we can build into the new LeggLife website now that we have it. It still bothers me that the place that we have to like comment and interact with you is on YouTube.
That's the only place.
I hate that.
Yeah.
And so I may look into seeing if there's a way to do like a forum or any kind of a just kind of discussion board feature on the LeggLife website. I don't know. I just don't love that it's on YouTube because the vast majority of people don't listen to us on YouTube.
Right.
So I'd like to figure that one out as well.
Yeah. Goals.
But mostly we just want to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and it's, like we said, it's very lightweight, and still, I mean, like our YouTube videos, like if we don't have something to talk about, or if we're just not in the mood, or we're too tired, or whatever, we just don't.
Yeah, we don't upload that week.
Right, and so it just doesn't feel like we have to, and that's great.
I've loved hearing from so many of you about where you listen. A lot of you listen while you're cleaning. I've learned that. You're like, every week, like Saturday's cleaning day, you put in your AirPods and we're who you spend time with while you vacuum. A lot of you listen while you're out running errands. Some of you have said that you listen at work, like you'll pop AirPods in and just like listen while you work. I know that there's families that listen together, which is super cool. Sorry for all the time Sherry curses. I'm just kidding. I'm not sorry for that
I
at all.
need some outlet to...
Yeah. And
Can't do it on YouTube.
And this is it.
This is it.
And so I just love hearing from you on where you listen. And it's super cool because, I don't know, I forget sometimes that a lot of you really, this sounds so dumb, I forget that you guys like the podcast because so much of what we do is focused on YouTube.
Right.
The podcast can feel like this, like, also, like, you know what I mean? This other thing. But there are people out there who don't watch our vlogs at all and who only know us as podcasters.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you have a YouTube channel? It's like, wait, what?
Oh, where do we find that?
I didn't know that. I've just been listening to your podcast. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for your support for 100 episodes. That is a crazy number. And we're excited to keep going.
Keep going. We do want ideas for other series.
Would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Other series, things you'd like to hear us talk about. Some of our
Themes.
some of our very best podcast ideas have come from you all, not us.
Right.
And so if there are things that you'd love to hear, if there are ideas that you have, here's what you got to do still. Go over to YouTube. Search LeggLife Podcast. Hit the subscribe button because there are like over 650 of you who have subscribed to that channel, which is crazy.
Appreciate that.
Super appreciate that.
Hit the little bell button so you know when we actually upload.
Hopefully it's every Saturday.
That's the goal.
And then find this 100th episode video and leave a comment on series that you'd love to see us kind of deep dive in, podcast topics, things you'd like to hear us discuss. We got some really great ideas recently over on an Instagram Live. And I don't know, I'm excited to keep doing this because I genuinely enjoy this.
Me too.
Friends, we love you. Thanks for listening, and we will see you. Actually, you know what? We will not see you next week.
Right.
Here's the thing.
We're taking next week off.
We're taking next week off. Next week is the day after Thanksgiving. And so we're going to be traveling, doing Indiana stuff, and then coming home. And so we said, you know what? Let's take time off. But then the week after, we're kicking it off with our Advent series.
Yeah.
So we will see you back here in 2 weeks. We love you all so much, and we'll see you on the next LeggLife podcast.
Bye.
Bye.